Okay, not gonna lie, this is almost the perfect phone for me in 2024, and after using it for 7 months as a power user, there's a lot to unpack here about this great device. So I split this video into 7 main parts and their subcategories, and at the end of the video you will be able to determine whether this is the right device for you. The S24 Ultra features Samsung's refined Note design with sharper boxy corners, even display bezels, and a flat display, making this phone look futuristic and unique. This design is also necessary to create slightly more space in the interior for the inclusion of a built-in stylus. It has an all-round titanium frame with Gorilla Glass armor on the front and back of the device, and after using it for 7 months without a screen protector, the screen is still flawless. Which brings me to the anti-reflective coating that is exclusive to the S24 Ultra right now because of this new Gorilla Glass armor. And you really want to think twice before sacrificing this coating for a screen protector. Cause this screen can reduce refractions from bright light sources by about 70%, making your viewing experience better, especially in direct sunlight, without sacrificing display quality unlike a matte screen protector. Side note, Samsung does sell an anti-reflective screen protector, but it doesn't give you the same level of anti-reflective properties and it is not cheap, so I don't recommend it. Okay, the titanium frame didn't hold up well after 7 months, especially for reviewers who use it without a case. And for me, I use a loose case, and a sand particle managed to wedge itself in between the frame of my phone and the case, scratching off the anodized gold finish on the titanium frame. So if you want to protect this phone, buy a good tight case. Don't get me wrong, titanium is still a stronger and more premium material than aluminum, and it has anti-corrosive properties, which means it should not rust. But the finish is just easy to scratch off, especially if you anodize it with a different color. Okay, speaking of titanium, let's talk about the weight of this phone, because this is one heavy phone even with titanium. In fact, this phone is just 1 gram lighter than the S23 Ultra and a lot heavier than my previous phone, the S21 Ultra, as titanium is actually heavier than aluminum. Side note, the iPhone 15 Pros got lighter with titanium because Apple upgraded from stainless steel, which is a heavier material, so let's not get confused there. Okay, aside from that, this phone is the perfect size for me. In fact, I have relatively big hands, so the sharp corners are fine, and part of me wants Samsung to bring back the old Note 20 Ultra's bigger 6.9-inch screen size. Okay, speaking of which, let's move on to the display. This phone packs a Quad HD Plus 120Hz 6.8-inch corner-to-corner LTPO display with only a small hole punch camera at the top, giving you an almost uninterrupted viewing and drawing experience with no rounded corners to cut into your full screen content. It has a max sustained brightness of around 1400 nits and a peak HDR brightness of 2600 nits. So this is basically one of the best smartphone displays out there in 2024, and I just want to point out that most smartphone flagship displays are top notch, so you can never go wrong with any one of them. Also, the anti-reflective coating of this S24 Ultra makes it come out on top, making this display feel brighter and more premium than other similarly spec'd displays out there. And moving forward, I believe this anti-reflective coating should be the norm in all flagship smartphone displays, and it should not be exclusive to some phones and iPads, which is part of the reason why I am disappointed in the Z Fold 6 and the Z Flip 6 for not having this display. Link to the video on my thoughts on the Samsung foldable launch event in the description below. Also, with this 120Hz display, every animation on this phone feels extra smooth. For those who are living under a rock, this display can basically refresh 2 times faster than a typical 60Hz panel found in older phones and all non-Pro iPhones. At the same battery, this LTPO display is advertised to seamlessly skew down to 1 Hz when you are not interacting with the display. But in my testing, it only managed to seamlessly scale down to as low as 24Hz, shown here with the show refresh rate setting toggled on in developer's option. For video content, it managed to scale down to the correct frame rate of the video, so that is good. The in-display fingerprint scanner is super responsive, and with muscle memory, I am able to get it right every single time. And also, I am sometimes able to unlock the phone when pulling it out of my pocket, so that is amazing. Performance. This phone is equipped with the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy, which have an overclocked GPU and apparently only a slight overclock on the 1X series high-performance CPU core, with slight underclocks on the rest of the CPU cores, which should help with battery life. Get to that later. But to be honest, this is overkill for basic tasks like browsing the web and occasional light games. But for medium graphic games and for medium load like video rendering, it is fast. But you can totally thermal throttle this Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 for Galaxy under heavy sustained loads, heavy gaming sessions, especially under the hot sun in Singapore. No non-gaming phones can sustain heavy loads for long because they rely on passive cooling, unlike the active cooling fans found in some gaming phones. The stereo speakers are good enough for normal use cases, and the vibration motor is amazing. The haptic feedback from things like pressing the shutter button, scrolling through the zoom range of this camera, and typing on the on-screen keyboard is just simply a joy to use. We have come to the next point, battery life. This phone maintains its 5000 mAh battery from last year. And to be honest, this capacity is smaller than some of the competition out there with 5600 mAh and more. But you can still expect all-day battery life with light to medium use on this phone, and it surprisingly fares quite well against flagships with much larger batteries, probably thanks to those underclock cores and optimized software. But if you push it on mid to heavy load, it will probably last you around 4 hours of screen on time, and if you use these cameras all day, you'll be looking at around 3 hours of screen on time or less. Well, speaking of which, it's time to move on to those cameras. By the way, if you are enjoying the video so far, please like and consider subscribing so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, the cameras. This is one of the best all-range cameras you can buy right now, with a main 1/1.3 inch f1.7 main camera, a 1/3.5 inch f2.4 3x telephoto, and 1/2.5 inch sensor size for both the f2.2 ultra-wide and f3.4 5x periscope zoom camera. And on the front, we have a f2.2 12 megapixel shooter, which I don't have the exact sensor size for, but it is a better sensor than the old 1/2.8 inch f2.2 40 megapixel front camera on the S24 Ultra. This year, only the 5x periscope camera is new, as Samsung ditched the old 10x periscope camera for this new larger sensor, which should help with low light. Okay, some reviewers do say that in bright lighting conditions, the 10x to 30x zoom range of this camera is comparable to last year's 10x periscope camera, but others say that it's slightly worse. I don't have the S23 Ultra to test this, but theoretically, in bright lighting conditions, the 10x periscope zoom camera of the S23 Ultra can capture slightly more detail than the 5x periscope zoom camera of this S24 Ultra, simply because it has a further optical range, whereas this past 5 times is all digital zoom. So, moving on, this shoots good quality photos and one of the best videos on any Android phone right now. The view behind me is beautiful, at the Sunburned Lake. Nothing much except there's a very interesting bridge over there. Welcome to another city view, where we are greeted by a green building down below. And also we definitely pass by that one. That is actually a hotel. Ooh. Right. Not much more. Moving on. There's a temple here. To switch to a better camera. Look at this place at night. Amazing. There's even like toy trains in here. But its weakness is still low light video. Cause out of all the cameras, only the main shooter is able to keep up at night. With the weakest camera being the ultra wide and the 3x telephoto, as these are older sensors and are in need of an upgrade in my opinion. Just for context, this ultra-wide camera debuted on the S20 Ultra, and this 3x telephoto camera debuted on the S22 Ultra. Until now, it is still the weakest sensor on the Ultra line. Which brings us to those dedicated camera phones from Chinese companies like Vivo, Oppo, and Xiaomi, which uses better sensors and sometimes is able to outperform the S24 Ultra in both photos and videos, especially the Vivo X100 Ultra. But the problem with those Chinese companies is the availability of their camera phones, because right now you can only easily buy the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and for the Vivo X100 Ultra and the Oppo Find X7 Ultra, they are only limited to third-party online websites, which is very hard for me to recommend. And like most smartphone cameras like the S24 Ultra, there is bound to be some missed shots, and some object colors and skin tones might not be accurately represented in photos and videos. Your usage might vary. And here are some missed shots when I was attempting to shoot some photos from a fast-moving vehicle.
补充一下啊，嘉义到阿里山，我们旅行社当然都有安排你们上下山铁公路的特色不同就一趟是专车一趟是小火车，所以有的火车票车是。
Also, I have links to some camera comparisons in the description below, so do check them out. And now it is time for the next section. Enter the software. This phone packs Samsung's One UI skin on top of Android with 7 years of software support. And knowing Samsung, they pack everything but the kitchen sink into the software. We have features like quick open, split screen multitasking, and pop-up window through the Edge panel and the touch changer. Tons of other features and customizations in the settings for you to make this phone your own. And if you install the Good Lock app from the Galaxy Store, you can unlock even more features like customizing your quick panel icons and keyboard and much more, which will make this video way too long if I cover them all. So moving on, you have wired and wireless DeX support on the S24 Ultra, which I never use because I have a computer. But if you do use it, it basically gives you a full Windows experience on an external monitor, but only with Android apps, of course. And with wireless DeX on your Windows computer, it makes file transfer easier between the phone and a Windows PC. And in my opinion, Samsung DeX beats out Apple's Stage Manager on the iPad Pros. But of course, the iPads have other advantages over Android that I will cover next time. Also, not a lot of people know this, but you can actually use routines to automate your phone. Like for example, you want to save battery by keeping location services off, but still want it on for your apps that require it. You can automate that. Or if you like to keep your always on display on all the time when your phone is on a wireless charger, well, you can do that. And with this feature called reverse actions, it is smart enough to know your previous settings and what the routine changed, and can automatically revert them after the routine ends. Unlike shortcuts on iOS and iPadOS, which needs a separate routine to revert the other routine. Like, what is this? Also, another underrated feature is this Samsung Pay feature that is available in Singapore called Transport Card. When it is enabled, you can just freely tap the back of your phone without any authentication, even when you are in another app or with the screen off. Okay, what happens if you tap on a non-transport NFC reader? It will not go through, as it is smart enough to differentiate between a transport terminal and one that is not. Okay, it is time to cover app optimization. I will say this, most apps will run smoothly and without an issue on Android. However, if you want good social media optimization, especially for taking photos and videos in the social media app itself, there are mixed reviews about this. My thoughts are, if you truly value this very feature, it is still safer with an iPhone. Also, apps are normally easier to optimize for iOS and iPadOS simply because there's only one brand to do it for, unlike the countless other Android brands out there. So you may find that some apps run smoother or simply work better on iOS and iPadOS, and also the availability of some exclusive features might be first added or exclusive to iOS and iPadOS, or in some rare cases, it will be first added or exclusive to Android apps. Also, side note, some apps are exclusively available on Android and some are exclusively available on iOS or iPadOS. So please do your research before making a purchase. So after getting that out of the way, let's talk about those AI features. Cause honestly, the only ones I use quite often is the transcribing and summarizing of recordings in the Samsung Recorder app. And occasionally, I will use Galaxy AI to summarize web pages from the Samsung Internet app and do some generative image edits, and using the Magic Eraser in the Samsung Gallery app. Hey, not gonna lie, this is almost the perfect phone for me in 2024. And after using it for 7 months as a power user, there's a lot to unpack here about this great device. So I split this video into 7 main parts and their subcategories. And at the end of the video, you will be able to determine whether this is the right device for you. The transcribing of recording still needs work. I know this is a hard recording, but this is a real-world test. The summarizing of web pages is useful, and the generative image edits are cool, but they are not perfect. The Magic Eraser is not new. I have this previously on my S24 Ultra and it works well. So what I can say is that Galaxy AI is still in its early stages and more improvement needs to be done, especially in terms of optimization, reliability, and accuracy. The integration of the transcribing and summarizing of recordings feature in the Notes app is a good addition in the Z Fold 6 and the Z Flip 6. However, more certainly needs to be done. So the S24 Ultra has tons of features and gimmicks for you to play around with, but you need to ask yourself whether you're fine with it or not. But since it's Android, you can install a custom launcher on top of it, or simply just easily turn the features off in settings. Okay, after talking so much about the intentional boxy design, the flat corner-to-corner display, and the software with its multitasking suite, you might be asking, why this phone has all these features and considerations? Well, the answer is the S Pen. Cause this is not just a precision tool for navigation, multitasking, and signing of documents. This is a Wacom EMR stylus that has 4096 levels of pressure like the Apple Pencil, but since it is using Wacom EMR technology, this pen doesn't need to be charged to be used as a stylus, as the display is the one powering it. Which means unlike the Apple Pencil, it will not stop working halfway through, and no battery needed also means that theoretically it will never spoil due to a battery failure. But Samsung also built a capacitor into the S Pen for, you guessed it, Bluetooth remote functionality. Because with the use of the S Pen button, you can use it as a remote shutter button that you can hide behind your back when taking a group selfie, or use it as a magic wand to navigate your device. But that is a total gimmick and I don't recommend using it as a magic wand. But for the Bluetooth remote functionality, the S Pen will eventually need to be recharged. And recharging it will just be as easy as putting the S Pen back into the phone and waiting 1 to 2 minutes, and it will be fully charged again for use. Also, speaking of the S Pen button, when you press it near a display, a menu shows up giving you even more features to use, like Smart Select, using the pen instead of your less precise finger, or using this digital magnifying glass for images that doesn't support pinch zooming. Also, you can use it as a fidget toy, but the spring in the clicker of the S Pen just feels cheap. I expect a better clicker for an $80 stylus. Yes, it is $80 to replace this S Pen. Hence, I recommend you to turn on the Forget Your S Pen feature so that the phone can warn you when you might have likely left your S Pen somewhere and didn't put it back into the phone. Also, for the artists out there, this phone is basically a digital canvas that you can bring around wherever you go. And not only that, the rubberized tip of this S Pen gives it a less slippery drawing experience than the hard tip Apple Pencil, so you can be more precise with your strokes. Which for me, I can work with both. But I'm not a professional artist, so yeah. Of course, not everyone needs a stylus for their phone, so for those people, you can just stick the S Pen back into the phone and forget it ever existed. Which brings me to the closing thoughts of the S24 Ultra, and whether this phone is right for you. Well, if you are a power user, an S Pen fanatic, or you want this orange camera system, or you just have the budget for a top-end Samsung flagship, well, this phone is right for you. But for the rest of you, there are cheaper options out there, like the Honor Magic 6 Pro, the new Pixel 9 Pro, or the regular S24 Plus. I know in Singapore and some other regions, the regular S24 and S24 Plus features the Exynos 2400 chip. What I can say is for light to medium tasks, it is good enough. And for battery life, it is not as bad as past Exynos chips. But if absolutely want the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, the S24 Ultra might be right for you. Or you will be looking at other Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 equipped devices like say Honor Magic 6 Pro, Xiaomi 14 Ultra, ROG Phone 8, or the OnePlus 12. Also, I would like to bring up the topic of hardware longevity, because ever since my previous phone, the S21 Ultra, got the purple line issue and countless others with similar issues with their Samsung devices, I can confidently tell you that Samsung flagship phones can outlast their 7 years of software support. I know most Android companies have the issue in the past, especially after the Android 12 update, that is almost over now. But it is still happening to Samsung devices like S21 Ultra right now, and with people keeping their devices for longer and phones getting more expensive, I think hardware longevity is as important as software support. So I will give you an update 2 years later on how the S24 Ultra holds up and whether the green and purple line issue still persists, because such issue only pops up around 2 years after the launch of the device. So right now the S24 Ultra is relatively new, so there is no such issues. So don't hold off your purchase just because of the green and purple line issue. Okay, so that is the end of my full detailed long-term review of the S24 Ultra. So if you do have any questions and comments, please leave them down in the comment section down below. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.